You can't move. You can't speak. You can't even open your eyes. But you can hear them, every word they're saying about you, as if you've already gone. For almost all of medical history, doctors were certain this was impossible, that if you couldn't respond, no one was left inside to respond. They were wrong. This is what happens in the first 24 hours inside a coma. As the lights go out, as strangers take over your body, and as your brain makes a decision, no one, not even you, gets to control. It starts with a single moment. For you, there's no warning. 1 second you're here. A thought, a face, the sound of a car. The next, nothing. No dream. No darkness. No sense of time passing at all. And this is the first thing almost nobody understands. A coma is not sleep. When you sleep, your brain runs cycles all night. Dreaming, surfacing, sinking again. A sleeping brain is busy. A comatose brain has gone silent in a way sleep never allows. On the monitors, the two look nothing alike. You look like you're resting. You're not. To understand why the lights went out, you have to understand how expensive you are. Your brain is about 2% of your body weight, but it burns roughly 20% of your oxygen and your fuel every second without pause. It can't store energy. It can't hold its breath. And the instant delivery is cut by a blow, a bleed, a clot, or a heart that simply stopped, the most complex object in the known universe begins to fail within minutes. That's the paradox inside you. The very thing that makes you conscious is also the thing least able to survive alone. Consciousness isn't free. It's the most fuel-hungry thing your body does. A coma is what happens when that bill can no longer be paid. Deep in your brainstem sits a small network called the reticular activating system, the switch for being awake at all. Damage it, or silence both halves of your cortex, and there is no dimmer. There is only off. Now the doors burst open and your body belongs to other people. In that first hour, a team does something strange to you. They press hard on your fingernail. They shout your name. They shine a light into each eye and watch the black center react. They're running a test published in 1974 by two neurosurgeons in Glasgow, Graham Teasdale and Brian Jennett, now used in almost every hospital on Earth. It's called the Glasgow Coma Scale, and it turns you into a number. Do your eyes open? Points. Do you make a sound? Points. Do you pull away from pain? Points. 15 means fully awake. The lowest score possible is 3, and 8 or below is the clinical line for coma. They aren't being cold. That number decides in the next few minutes whether to slide a tube down your throat and let a machine breathe for you. Because in deep coma, the reflex that guards your own airway can vanish. Without help, you could drown in the silence. Not in water, in your own breath. So the machine takes over. And here's the second thing almost nobody expects. Sometimes the doctors put you deeper. If your brain is swelling, if the pressure inside your skull is climbing toward the point where it crushes itself against solid bone, doctors may deliberately shut your brain down further with drugs. A medically induced coma. They lower your brain's demand for fuel on purpose, to buy it a chance to survive the storm. Listen that again. To save your mind, they sometimes have to switch more of it off. In that moment, the coma isn't the disease. It's the treatment. But whatever the cause, the real danger in the first day is often not the original injury at all. It's what comes next. Scientists call it the secondary injury, and it's a slow-motion avalanche. The first insult kills some cells instantly, and those dying cells spill their contents into their neighbors. A flood of a chemical called glutamate, which in normal life carries your every thought, and here becomes a poison, forcing the surrounding neurons to fire until they burn out. Calcium pours in, cells swell, the brain begins pressing against the walls of your own skull. This is why the first 24 hours decide so much. The doctors aren't fighting the injury that already happened. They're fighting the injury that's still happening, racing to stop a fire from spreading to rooms that haven't caught yet. And through all of it, you show nothing. No movement, no expression, no reply. Which raises the question that has haunted this field for decades, the one hiding under this entire video. Is anyone still in there? For most of medical history, the answer was assumed. No response meant no one home. Silence meant absence. Then, in 2006, a scientist named Adrian Owen broke that assumption in half. At Cambridge, Owen had a patient who, by every bedside test, was unreachable. He slid her into a brain scanner and asked her, out loud, to imagine two things. First, playing a game of tennis. Then, walking through the rooms of her house. And her brain lit up. Not randomly. It lit up in exactly the same regions, the same motor areas, the same spatial navigation areas, as a healthy, wide-awake person given the same instructions. She couldn't move a finger. She couldn't blink an answer, but she'd heard him, understood him, and done exactly what he asked. She was in there. 4 years later, in 2010, Owen and Martin Monti pushed further, publishing in the New England Journal of Medicine. They found a handful of unresponsive patients who could do the same, and turned it into a conversation. Imagine tennis for yes. Imagine your house for no. Then they asked one-man questions only he could know, about his own family, his own life. And a man the world had written off as empty answered, correctly, with nothing but the shape of his own thoughts. You might think this is vanishingly rare, but in 2019, researchers at Columbia, led by Jan Klassen, studied unresponsive patients in intensive care in the acute days right after a brain injury. Patients exactly like the one this video describes, in exactly this window. They fitted them with sensors and gave one simple command: keep opening and closing your hand. The hands never moved. But in about 15% of these silent, motionless patients, the brain flared with the effort to obey. The hidden signal of a mind trying to answer through a body that had stopped listening. Roughly 1 in 7. Awake behind the curtain, and from the outside, no one could tell. There's a name for it now: cognitive motor dissociation, the mind and the body torn apart. It means that in that first 24 hours, in that quiet room where everyone speaks about you in the past tense, you may be hearing every single word. Which brings us to the most human part of this story. If some part of you might still be in there, what can it reach? In 2020, researchers at the University of British Columbia went looking for the last sense to leave. They measured the brains of dying, unresponsive people in their final hours, and found that even then, even at the very end, the brain was still registering sound, still marking the difference between one tone and the next, long after every other sign of the person had faded. Hearing, it seems, may be the last door to close. This is why the nurses tell your family the same thing. Gently, over and over. Talk to them. Hold their hand and talk to them. Not as a comforting ritual, but because it may be landing. The voices, the apologies, the "I'm here." You may have no way to answer, but you may not be alone in there either. Now, the honest part, because this deserves honesty. This is not most comas. Cognitive motor dissociation is the frightening exception, not the rule. The majority of people in a deep coma truly are unaware, with no hidden experience underneath, and that, in its own way, is a mercy. A coma is also not the movie version. It rarely lasts for years. Usually within days to a couple of weeks, the brain chooses a direction, climbing back toward waking or sliding into another state entirely. Some surface and remember nothing at all, the entire day simply erased. Many recover, many do not, and no honest scientist can look at those first hours and say for certain which way any brain will go. We are only just learning to knock on the door, and to hear sometimes when something knocks back. And if the brain does lose this fight, if somewhere in those hours it finally begins to let go, it doesn't just dim like a lamp running out of oil. In 2013, and again years later in dying human patients, a scientist named Jimo Borjigan at the University of Michigan recorded something almost no one expected. In the moments after the heart stops, the brain doesn't fade quietly. It flares, a sudden surge of the fast, high-frequency activity we tie to vivid, conscious experience. A last storm of electricity, brighter than waking life, in a brain the world has already called gone. We don't know what that surge is. We may never know what it feels like from the inside. But it tells you something about the thing you are. You began this video as a person in a bed, silent, still, spoken about as if already absent. And beneath that stillness, in that first fragile day, there may be a whole world, hearing a voice, holding onto a name, reaching for the surface through a body that will not move. That's the secret the machines are still learning to read. Not that the quiet ones are gone, but that so often, impossibly, someone is still here. Human.